Welcome back to another episode of the To Your Health podcast. I'm joined today by Carrie West, and we're going to be talking about rewriting your health story. We're going to be talking about exactly what that means, but just, in a nutshell, we all tell ourselves stories about what it means to be healthy, about who we are, about what's possible for us. And over time, those stories can aid us in helping them come true, or they can hinder us if we're telling ourselves stories that limit our potential and how we show up in the world. So Carrie is the perfect person to talk about this because she has a background in filmmaking and psychology, and she combines storytelling expertise with psychological insights to empower her clients as a life story coach. She's also a brand new international best-selling author of a book called Rewritten, which we'll talk about, and she's a speaker who helps and who specializes in helping individuals and businesses transform their narrative to achieve greater success and fulfillment. And I think this is just such a cool combination of taking sort of seemingly unrelated areas of expertise and combining them into a single thing. So, Carrie, thank you for being here. And I'd love to just learn a little bit more about your background and kind of how this came to be your work.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you. I think our health is such a strategic part of who we are, and yet we don't take ownership of it. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about it. Um, how did I get started? Well, um, I had a difficult beginning to life, and the emotional and psychological pain traumatized me. And so I wasn't a very healthy person emotionally, mentally. Physically, I was okay, but not emotionally or mentally. I wasn't happy. I had trouble forming relationships. I had, all the usual suspects. And so when my father died when I was in my early 20s, I hit rock bottom. And I've often heard from people that you don't change until you hit rock bottom, that's really the impetus. Otherwise, you can float around, looking to change. So I didn't know that at the time. I just know when he died that that destroyed me. And at one point, it still took me a little bit of time after that. But at one point, I finally said, if I don't do something about my life, I'm not going to make it. I mean, I'm when I look back at it now, I'm surprised I made it to my early 20s because there was a lot of stuff that could have stopped me. Um, so I had started therapy and started doing anything to try to figure out why I was not having a successful life. And nothing was clicking. I went to therapy, I did metaphysical workshops, I did meditation, I did personal growth, personal development, talked to gurus, I did whatever I could to try to figure this out. And some strange stroke of luck, I got accepted at film school at the American Film Institute, which was interesting because my confidence levels were not very high. And I found out later that the AFI is one of the most prestigious film schools in the country, maybe even the world. A lot of the graduates there are, named people in my class are named. You'd recognize a lot of the people in my class as today's filmmakers. And so in the middle of preparing for one of our classes, one of our scripts, because you had to do a movie every couple of months, we were looking at the scripts and what was going on. And let me back up and say stories kept me alive as a child because in my dark moments of life, the way I could take care, the self-care part, was I would tell myself stories. You know, as a kid, and I'm not the only one that has this story that my real parents are looking for me and they're going to find me and I built upon this and I built this amazing, the kids have the best imaginations and so I built this amazing world that I really was supposed to be in instead of the one I was in. So back to film school, we're working on our scripts and we're talking about the themes and we're talking about the characters and we're talking about the settings and we're talking about the plot and we're talking. And all of a sudden I went, wait a minute. Antagonist and protagonist, the foil, the mentor. Oh my God. And then the themes, love hurts, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Uh, good versus evil, all these themes. And I went, oh my gosh, my life is a story. And I'm not even the star of some of the scenes, Sometimes I'm the quiet student in the third row. There are scripts that will say you need to play the quiet student in the third row, and that's the name of your character. And I thought sometimes I'm that character. Other times I am the protagonist. But when I started looking at my life from the perspective of it being a story, I could understand it. I made sense of it. I saw that I didn't come into this life with a story. None of us do. We're blank slates. And contrary to what some people think, we absorb everything. We learn from a very early age. And the thing we need more than anything is a sense of belonging. And so the first people we belong with are our families. And one of the things that we all feel is that you get a better sense of belonging with people that are like you. You feel more comfortable with people that are like you. And so it's a natural tendency for us to adopt what we see our family members doing and take that on as our story. That's how we feel like we belong. The best example of that is we learn English, the language of our families. And as a child, my father was from Italy, my mom was from Serbia. So we had three languages in the house. And I did speak a bit of Italian and a bit of Serbian when I was a kid. I don't anymore, but that's how you know you belong because you pick up these cues and they all become a part of this rich fabric of who you are. And without any kind of prompting, without any kind of awareness of that, that's what we do. And so when I saw all that, I started looking at my parents' stories, and my parents had the same kind of troubles that I
Hmm.
had. My parents were first generation Americans from Italy and Eastern Europe. My gosh, my mom didn't have a chance being from Eastern Europe in the early 1900s. My father from Italy. They had traditional models of what it meant to be a parent and how your kids should be and the gender role. So you take all this on and it becomes the fabric of your being. But that's where I really started working on it and then, started working with other people about it and it took off from there.
So interesting. Let's kind of hone in on the health related stories that we tell ourselves. Could you maybe give us some examples of stories that you've heard from clients just to kind of help the listeners identify or start to identify what their health story might be?
Well, one aspect of it is one that I've heard from a couple of people. I have a client who I don't want to use the word hypochondriac because it sounds judgmental, but she had a tendency to have a bunch of illnesses that had her going to the doctor on a regular basis. And come to find out that she felt the only time she had her mother's attention was when she was sick. When she was doing fine and everything was good, Mom didn't pay much attention to her. Mom wasn't affectionate. But the minute she got sick, oh, touch the forehead. Oh, take your temperature. Oh, can I get you some soup? What can I do for you? So all of a sudden she had mom's affection. And I've heard that from a number of people. So I think that's one message. The other message was something that I got from my mother. It turned out that my mom had mental health challenges. So when it came time to, I took the other side of it. When I'd go to the doctor and they'd say, "You seem depressed. Do you want something for your depression?" I don't want anything for my depression. I saw what it did to my mother. I want nothing to do with it. So I took the contrary role that I didn't want to get into. My mother became this voracious pill popper, any kind of new drug to try to help her with her mood swings, she was taking it, and it tore her apart. So I swore I would never do those drugs, never, ever, ever. And that's whether they're good or bad or different, I don't know. But I think it cost me a lot. I had a lot of traumatic things. I didn't get to the support of a good, if it was there, a good medication. The other thing is your eating habits. When your parents have certain eating habits, and again, both sides of the coin. I went to film school with this guy who had never had any kind of meat products in his body ever because his parents were very strict vegetarians. So here we were. He goes to the craft service table and there's bacon sandwiches and eggs and everything. He said, there isn't anything here I can eat because I don't eat any meat products. And he was afraid if he would have eaten a meat product because he had never had that in his body, he maybe didn't have the enzymes to handle it. And then finally, smoking. My parents were voracious smokers. They did 3 packs a day. And plus, when I was growing up, cigarette ads were common. Cigarette ads were everywhere, and it was cool to smoke. So, of course, when it was time for me to experiment, I tried smoking. And I quit in my when I was about 25. I didn't smoke the whole time, but I tried it, quit, tried it, quit. And then I finally, when I was around 25, I just put down the cigarettes and never picked them up again. But these are the things that we see and accept as a part of life. We can also take it to another step of what is your health regime? Do you have an active lifestyle? Do you have a plan for your health? Do you advocate for yourself with your health? Again, with doctors, so many times, if a doctor says, you broke your arm, we have to set it, fine, you set it. But if it's something like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm going to give you this because we're going to see if you have that. You don't, so many times we won't question it. We don't advocate for ourselves to see, is this right? Can I get another opinion? Doctors are humans, but we've put them on pedestals and made them responsible for our healing and our health. I was having a procedure done, and they couldn't believe that a woman in their 60s didn't have a whole list of medications they were on. I did, and they just could not believe it. And they kept saying, "You sure you aren't on any kind of high blood pressure, low blood pressure, this?" Nope, I'm not on any of them. They were shocked. So people in my generation are overly medicated. They have so many pills in their pill box. Again, not a judgment, but do we know about any contradictions with those pills? So we have to really advocate for ourselves.
Those are some
Long
great
answer again.
yeah, no, there's some great examples, and it's interesting how sometimes what we're exposed to makes us kind of the pendulum swing the other way in the case of, you feeling like adamantly opposed to medications after seeing your mom, abuse them. But then with smoking, it's like, well, this is what I saw my parents doing, so then this is kind of what I do. So it's interesting how sometimes it's you follow the same path, sometimes you veer off it. Is there anything you've noticed specifically with women, their mothers, and weight related issues? It was something that comes up with my clients a lot is, either I was put on a diet at 11 years old, or my mom was constantly dieting. And although, it was never said to me, I was in the Weight Watchers meetings in the church basement also, or, you just kind of pick up on those things. What kind of health stories do you think come about because of that sort of exposure?
I have it somewhere on my list to write a book called Food Rewritten because we have, and by the way, Health Rewritten is on the list too. It's probably I've got 2 more going on, so maybe in the third or fourth one.
Amazing.
Uh, um, we have such an interesting relationship with food, don't we? I mean, from vegan to vegetarian to fruitarians to don't eat beef, only eat fish. It's like, it's food. It's food. Our culture has just put so much weight on what food is and what it will do to us. Food was designed to give us energy and nutrition. And then I have other friends, and these are friends, and I used to do this too. I have had shelves of herbs and vitamins that I took every day. I'd carry these bottles with me on vacations that had all my pills, all my herbs, all my vitamins that I took every day. And after a while, they're not effective. You take them for years and they lose their effectiveness with you. Your body builds up a resistance to them, but still you spend so much money on these things. Um, if we eat appropriately for our bodies, we don't need them because we do have everything we need in the food we eat, but we don't take the time. We don't take the time. We don't see food as a gift and as and something to be enjoyed. We when you can go out and have a great meal with friends or when you have family over and you get to prepare this beautiful meal and you get to share it and enjoy it. We don't. A lot of holiday dramas. And I'm in those too, so that's definitely not a judgment. We do it all the time, and arguments about what's for dinner, what time, and we have forgotten that food is a gift to be enjoyed and to be cherished, and it does support and nurture us. Yet we don't even think about it. We grab a bite to eat. We get a quick drink. We get an energy drink. We grab something on the run. And so it's no wonder our bodies are out of sync. Our bodies are out of sync with the purpose of food and what we can do to be happy and healthy. And you're right, going to weight loss when you're 10 years old, even if you're just going as with your mom, you're absorbing that. You're watching these and it's also judgments around our weight. So what if I have a few extra pounds? We have, gosh, I'm going off on all these tangents, Esther. I'm so sorry. This is this is such a rich topic dealing with this. Um, that I don't know we can do it justice on one call, but the food we eat and the diets and this whole body shaming we do to each other, you're too skinny, you're too fat, you're too bony, you're too this. Why can't we just be accepting of who we are?
So how do you think, or how have you seen these stories that we start developing as children kind of manifest in adulthood? How might a person's let's kind of stick with a a weight focused example because a lot of the women listening do have weight loss goals. So
Mhm.
say you were exposed to dieting at a young age, negative conversation about your and other women's bodies. How are the ways that that is kind of showing up in adulthood in women in ways that that's limiting them?
I have an unfortunate example that I'm going to share it. As my father was from Italy, and my younger sister was the carbon copy of him. Just looked exactly like him, a little bit shorter than the rest of us, curly hair, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But me and my two older siblings bullied her, and we would call her Mama Luigi and sing songs. And it's a shameful thing. She and I have and I'm talked with her about it, and she said I'm allowed to share this story. So and I've talked to her about it. And she is constantly fretting about her weight because somewhere in her head, she hears this horrible song of us calling her Mama Luigi. And so and I think when you focus as hard on it as she does, you almost have the self-fulfilling prophecy that you
Mm,
won't lose the weight
hmm.
because you make it so real. You put all your focus on losing it rather than how you would feel if you enjoyed and loved your body. And so she was trying to keep breaking that song that was playing in her head that she never heard, but it was playing there. And did calorie counting, counted every calorie she put in her body. And I said to her, please, you're so beautiful. You are one of the most beautiful women I've ever met. And yet you still are so focused. You still can't see that beauty in the mirror. Well, my pants are tight, grabbing her waist and touching her hips. My pants are tight. And it's like, I, when you can understand that I think when we don't like our bodies, it's because we were either taught to not like them, we were shamed into not liking them, we were told we were too fat, too skinny, too something. And so we make our body the enemy instead of being friends with our body and appreciating and valuing everything that the body does for us. The 2 feet that get us to walk, the maybe my back end is a little bit bigger, but guess what? I'm more comfortable on hard chairs.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I think is really profound, is that in your sister's case and in all of our cases, these stories are always playing but never heard. And that really is a great segue into the next question I wanted to ask, which is about how we can become aware of these stories that have been playing all along and we just haven't realized
Oh my gosh. Now you're talking storytelling. This is this
it.
is this is exactly right. How do you hear what's unhearable in your mind? How do you bring that to the surface? And sometimes it takes some time to bring it to the surface. And I always say to a client when they're under duress that I had this memory and this came up and oh my God, I say, good, we're getting to the story you need to hear. The minute you feel uncomfortable, that's the story we need to hear. The other clue is when somebody says, well, I shouldn't eat that. I shouldn't go shopping until I lose weight. I shouldn't. As soon as I hear should, it's stop. Tell me the story. What? Who told you you shouldn't go shopping until you lose weight? Well, no, who? Who told you that? Or I shouldn't eat that. Why? Why shouldn't you eat that? Well, I already had my share of calories for today. When you get into that way of thinking, there is a story there. There is something playing in your head that's preventing you from doing something that you want to do and you can do. And then it also says the story tells you how you're judging yourself. And all of these examples are judgments, and it's a story that you are responding to so you don't feel judged by yourself, by whomever gave you the story in the first place. And it's the same. Society is the same. A lot of people, a lot of women read the fashion magazines. I do too. I love all the new dresses. I love all the shoes and the clothes and all that. But when it gets to the point where you're looking at the camera and saying, well, no wonder she looks great in that dress. Look how skinny she is, or look how tall she is. That's the other one. Between being skinny and being tall, I mean, those are two things. I can't make anybody any taller than they already are. I'm sorry, I just can't do that. As far as being skinny, how skinny do you want to be? What's your health risk on skinny? What does that mean? So the 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 judgments, the shoulds, and the reasons why not. When you're telling yourself, "Ooh, no, I shouldn't do that." Those are the clues you have a story going on. I always tell people, pay attention to should.
That's really interesting. What suggestions do you have for people who may, start identifying the shoulds, but have trouble getting deep enough to get to the story? Because I can imagine, you kind of started off with, oh, well, why not? Oh, because, I don't want to spend the money on clothes that are a transition size. We tend to first have the logical explanation that sounds good, sounds legitimate. But you're probably right that there is something beneath the surface that is more emotional and deeply rooted. So, how do we get past the logic and the reason into the emotion?
Well, sometimes you have to just let the logic and reason, because it's those have kept us safe.
Mm,
The logic and the reason helped us survive a sad situation or a difficult situation. So remember, when we first start getting these stories, we're young and we're vulnerable. And when you get told, it's not like someone would lovingly say to you, oh, I don't want to get you any new clothes until you lose some weight because I'm worried about you, or this or that. It's usually, I'm not spending any more money on clothes for you until you lose 5 pounds. So the
Mm.
harshness comes out. So your response to that is to pull win. So I don't try to get people to the emotion until I understand that the logic and reason is a protection device. It's a safety mechanism that was developed so that they would feel okay. They didn't want to be vulnerable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So something that
So,
okay.
no, go ahead. My
Um,
computer's freezing up here. I'm trying to.
your picture's frozen, but I can hear you, so we'll go with it. Um, I appreciate that your book is
Okay.
life rewritten because I think, most people understand that your story is not completely written, right? You can still write the future chapters of your life. But what I think is really interesting is that you're talking about rewriting what's already happened. So my understanding of that is that it's helping people see that their interpretation of things in the past is not the only way to interpret them, and that if two people experience the same thing and one comes away better off because of it, because they learned something, it helped them grow, and one person comes off feeling really limited by it, that comes down to how their brains interpreted what was happening. So am I right with that? And what you're helping people do is rewrite their past in a way that benefits them?
Yes, and it's also one of the greatest gifts we have as human beings is we have the ability to reason. We
Mm,
have the ability to think. We have the ability to understand. And so when you look at one of these things around dieting, especially, people will come to me and say, I don't know why I can't lose these last 10 pounds. It's like, okay, excuse me. Um, why do you want to lose these last 10 pounds? Why not the first 10 pounds? Why not the middle 10 pounds? Why the last? I challenge people by, using humor. You're smiling when I say that, but I challenge people to think differently than the way we've been taught to think about some of these things. And so it's why do you want to lose that? Well, I want to get a new dress, or I'm going to my sister's wedding and the gown, I want it to be a little bit looser on me and such and such. Okay, so let's work out a plan. What do you think you need to do to lose this 10 pounds? Well, and why 10? Do you think 5 would be enough, or is 10 the goal? So I take them through it. And again, no judgments, because there's something underneath that. There's something underneath that, because we can certainly get a dress that'll fit us and look gorgeous on us no matter what our body size is. So I want to get them comfortable with that. And the other thing is, when you start to remember how you got these messages, how you built your story, again, story of my mom, I had to forgive her and understand that it wasn't me. She made me feel like I was a flawed, disgusting being. I had to understand that she acted the best way she could with the information she had, and reach a level of forgiveness. When you forgive somebody, you're setting yourself free from jail. That's a great way to end those voices in your head, forgiveness. But when I'm starting with somebody and, let's say she wants this 10 pounds to get into this dress, when we get to the point where she'll understand that she got some message about her body wasn't right, or her body didn't look right, or she needed to do something with her body. It could be present day, it could be a spouse or a boyfriend that made some comment, but let's say it is from the past. You can't change the words that they gave you, but you can change your reaction to it. You
mm,
can change your response to it. I don't tell people to forget that that happened to them and do something differently. I tell them to find the gem in that experience.
mm,
So here, Here, you're told your mom gave you some message that you always had to lose 10 pounds. You'd look better if you lost 10 pounds, which is sometimes the root of it. So can you understand that your mom was doing that because she had a lot of weight issues and it didn't have anything to do with you? A lot of times our mothers try to make us the women they wish they could have been. So can you see that that's what she did and forgive her? And then you get to make your own decisions about your body. You get to decide how much you want to weigh. You get to decide how you look. And by the way, I mean, it always shocks me when these women that I would consider bone thin are coming in saying, I need to lose my last 10 pounds. And it's like, oh my God. We need to break this pattern. But when you understand why you were given that message, why you were given that story, then you can honestly, Esther, I see people just physically go, wow.
Mhm.
The shoulders relax. It's like, oh my gosh, you're right. That isn't my story.
That's really
That's,
interesting. We are all, just by nature, such self-centered creatures that we naturally think everything is about us, and it just very often isn't. And I think especially when most of us don't realize where our stories come from or that we even have them in the first place. So it stands to reason that the people who kind of were the stars of those stories also didn't realize the impact that they were having on you. That, very mostly, and I'm sure there are instances of intentional, abuse and neglect and things, but for the most part, everybody's just doing the best they can with what they have and just don't realize how it's being perceived and interpreted or the impact that it's having on other people, again because we're so focused on ourselves. Mom wasn't saying those things to you because she wanted to make you feel bad. She was probably trying to protect you from, the bullying or the rejection that she felt she'd experienced as a result of her weight. And I think that that probably does help with coming to a place of forgiveness when you realize the intention was probably good, and it's just, it just gets kind of messed up in translation.
and even if the intention wasn't good, it has
Right,
nothing to
still not
do,
about me.
it still has nothing to do with you. You can go into meditation and say, no, thank you.
Mm.
You get this back. This one's not mine. This pain and shame that you felt that you want me to feel to protect me so I don't have to experience it. No, give me the skills. When I talk with parents, give your kids the skills to make mistakes and learn from them and grow and be there to help them when they make the mistakes. Don't try to protect them from the things you got damaged by.
I know this is kind of a loaded question, but something that I've seen with clients is like when we get into like the deep mental work, it can feel like such an uphill battle. It can just feel like this is like to my core, like who I have been and who I think I am, and it just feels almost impossible to be or feel different. Can you speak to kind of like I know you can't give like a timeline of, within 6 months you'll be this percent better, but to give some hope to somebody out there who might be feeling like I can relate to a lot of this, but I can't fathom just forgiving, or I can't fathom giving these beliefs back. Like how what is possible in terms of kind of the rewriting, and what kind of, investment in our time and our energy, et cetera, does it really take to make a meaningful change in our life story?
I, first of all, when I work with somebody, I do a clear discussion with them. I have a free call and I say, I want to know your level of motivation. Because if you're really motivated in changing, because change is scary and you will have some disruption in your life when you change. The comforting things that even though you hated that job, you know how to do that job, and starting a new one is scary. Even though this relationship is not good for you, leaving it is going to be difficult. So I need to check your level of real motivation to change. And once I know that, I've had people with 5 1-hour sessions completely turn their lives around. I've had people I work with for 3 months, once a week. And that's a little bit of a deeper rooted issue. But when you're motivated to change, I I only work with people that are truly motivated to change because there are a lot of people out there that just want to keep getting proven that they'll never
Hmm.
lose
Hmm.
the weight or they'll never get the job or they'll never get the person that they want to be in a relationship with. So that's another long-winded answer to your question.
No, but
Um,
that's helpful, and I think that's exactly what I see in health and weight loss also is you can be feeling way better, looking way different in a lot shorter time than you think, but you got to be, you got to be committed to it. You have to be doing the things. And I think, yeah, before you're ready, there's a lot of sort of justifying or making excuses or just like not really making the full effort. And that's when it feels like you're doing the things, but you're not getting the result. So it's helpful to know that it can happen quickly. Um, I want to I want to talk about your book, but before we get to that, I want to know if you have any sort of advice or sort of practical steps for our listeners who this is hitting close to home for and want to start taking some action today. What's one first step a person could take after listening to this episode?
hmm, that's a good question. Pay attention. We're so busy and there's so much chaos in the world right now that for many of us, me included, we're on autopilot, right? We're just jumping from one thing to the next to the next to the next. Slow down. Try to give yourself maybe an hour even and slow down and see what happens in your mind. If you can close your eyes and just take a deep breath and notice the thoughts that are constantly running through your brain. Constantly. I have songs in my head all the time. And I pay attention to the song because it speaks to the mood I'm in. Like lately it's been What's Love Got to Do with It? Well, I'm writing a book called Love Rewritten, and so of course all these love songs are in my head. But when you can just take a minute and just let or 10 minutes, if you can't spend any more than that, and just try to close your eyes and try to clear your mind. You won't be able to, but no, but see what thoughts are coming up. And if it's like, oh gosh, I forgot to call. Oh, I have to get this. Ooh, it's usually a laundry list of to-do things we have to do. And so when you get that, just know that there are other stories playing and you can get to them. But you need to pay attention and you need to give yourself a break at some point in the day to start listening to them. And especially if it's around a diet, I think whenever my clients are on diets, I couldn't stop thinking of that chocolate cake. Well, have some chocolate cake. Oh my God, it's got 10 billion calories. Okay, well then just take a bite of it. You know, that tells me how afraid you are of food and how afraid you are to put food in your body because you don't want it to you'll judge yourself and you'll hate yourself for it. And that just tells me you don't have a really good relationship with food. So that's always the first clue of where to work. That tells me right away we have to get to all your stories around food.
I love that. That's a great place to start is just with developing awareness first, and then once you have a better understanding of what it is that's happening or going through your head, then you can make, decisions based on all of that. So let's talk about your book. I love that you have a whole series planned and that you're going to break down all the different, big pillars of life. But the new one or the first one is Life Rewritten, basically
Yep,
instant international bestseller. Tell us
yep.
about Tell us about the book.
It's 3 books in one. It is really the introduction to the storytelling process for life. And each chapter starts with a story from my life and then a story element that I then break apart the story from my life. So you'll start to see how your stories have these components to them, how your life is filled with these characters and plots and themes and perspectives and dramas and all this. So the first part is a story from my life, then the story element, and then how to. Because when I thought about writing a how-to workbook to go with it, I had nervous anxiety problems, and luckily I found an editor that said, "Yeah, you can put it all in the same book," and we did it. So I'm thrilled about that. So you have three books in one. Um, my story memoir, how the stories fit into your life, which will give you a great idea about that. And finally, specific step-by-step things you can do to actually start working on your story. And there's charts and stuff that are all on my website as well, so you can get all this information downloaded for you.
I love it. Okay, I'll make sure to get the link in the show notes. Where is it sold? Amazon, other places?
Amazon? Yep. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the usual suspects, and you should be able to order it from a local bookstore at this point. It should be out there now.
Awesome. Love that. I just saw my book in our local bookstore for the first time, and it was a little bittersweet's not the right word, but I was excited to see it, but also was like, well, that means no one's bought it yet. So so now
Do,
somebody has to go buy it. But that's
do
super
you
cool.
want a link to my,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah,
Do
I'll
you want
I'll
the,
I'll grab it off Amazon. I'll stick it in there.
okay.
Um, and just briefly tell us about your coaching. You're a life story coach, which
Yeah.
is different from a life coach minus the story. So, who is it that you work with? And I know you've talked about kind of what you do with them, but who's kind of your ideal client?
I'm looking for people that are at a point of they're now ready to change. I was working with a college professor who, after trying for decades, couldn't get tenure. We got him tenure. I was working with this woman who was in a bad relationship. She happily married to the love of her life. I was working with another person that, it's just they're at that pinnacle. They're at that point where okay, this has nothing has worked. I'm ready. And then we get to work and solve it and get you into the dream that you've been living, that you want to live.
Love it. Those are some powerful case studies. All right, you guys, make sure you check out the links in the show notes. Check out Carrie's website, Instagram, book, coaching services. Carrie, thank you so much for your time. This has been really interesting. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll be back next week with another episode.